So what do we have in store for the year ahead in the real estate market? Well, looking at where we are right now and what's currently happening sheds some great insight on what we should expect in the upcoming year. Hi, I'm Diane Harris with Premier Sotheby's International Realty here in Naples, Florida. And yes, it's true that the market is still super hot, particularly here in Naples Southwest Florida. But let's look to the experts to see what they have to say about the housing market in 2022. So according to a recent report from the National Association of Realtors, growth in the new housing inventory has slowed over the past decade in the aftermath of the 2008 housing crisis, and it's created an underbuilding gap of 5.5 million to 6.8 million housing units across the country since 2001. So what else is taking place that is driving this real estate forecast for 2022? Well, rents and housing prices continue to increase due to low supply and high demand. And in addition, we are looking at a 4.2% unemployment rate, which closely matches the unemployment rate back in March 2020, before the pandemic started. So job creation or new jobs coming to the market have mostly continued to increase month over month since the pandemic started, but we're still not back to normal. We're about 4 million jobs short. Now, the total non-farm payroll, which is the total number of U.S. workers in the economy, excluding proprietors, has continued to rise since the pandemic hit. So this graph shows that the number of payroll jobs in the U.S. is rising, but it's just not quite back to where we were prior to the pandemic. So we see a surge of home sales since the pandemic, and this year was the largest number of home sales in 2021 than the number of homes sold per year than in the past 15 years. Now, median home prices have soared to all-time highs at over $400,000. So the National Association of Realtors has asked 23 real estate economists and experts for their forecasts in the real estate market on things such as inflation. Now, their average expectation was for a 4% inflation rate, which by historical standards is still high. Ideal inflation is somewhere around 2%. However, their prediction of 4% inflation is just not as bad as the anticipated 6.8% that other experts were predicting. So you can see from this graph what each of the 23 experts predicted, with the lowest being 2.7% inflation rate and the highest from one expert predicting 7.5%. So however, the average of all those polled is still around 4%. So now what about home price appreciation? So the average consensus is that the home prices will rise about 5 to 7% from our expert panel. But remember, last year they predicted home prices would increase by 6.8%, and the actual price increase for 2021 was 20.3%. Yikes. So here you see one expert, he's on the negative end, predicting home sales decreasing by 10%. And on the positive side, we have two experts predicting as high as 12% median home price increase. So regarding interest rates, the average consensus of the panelists is that the Federal Reserve will be raising interest rates 2 times next year. So how does that all impact Naples and Southwest Florida? Well, in case you missed it, the Wall Street Journal and Realtor.com Emerging Housing Markets Index Report, which ranks metro areas according to real estate market data and economic health, it was released in January 2022, and it ranked Naples, Florida as the #1 market in the country for the fourth quarter of 2021. So U.S. home sales rose to a 15-year high in 2021 as homebuyer demand kind of surged because of low mortgage interest rates, and as more employees opted to work remotely, they were willing to move farther from their jobs in search of a lower cost of living or a different lifestyle. Naples and Southwest Florida were definitely the beneficiaries of these changes. So the demand for the Naples lifestyle eclipsed all expectations and really helped to break several home sales records in 2021. Now the year ended with a 25.8% increase in overall closed sales and a 20.3% increase in median closed price year over year. So broker analysts reviewing the December and year-end 2021 market reports released by the Naples Area Board of Realtors, which tracks our home listings and sales within Collier County. Now that excludes Marco Island, but they all agree that the Naples housing market is going to go through a transformation, and that the last 18 months of record sales activity will not be sustainable in 2022. So they strongly urge sellers and buyers to work with a local realtor to help them navigate transactions smoothly with the least amount of obstacles. So sellers of homes located in Naples capitalized on a long wave of pent-up buyer demand in 2021, and a year that exceeded many neighbor records, including over $17 billion in home sales. That's a 52% increase from 2020. So now, according to the neighbor market reports, pending sales listings increased 14.8% over 2020. Now, strong buyer demand kind of devoured that inventory, resulting in a 76.6% decrease in inventory from 2020, which is kind of scary. And then the broker analysts agree that the pandemic-induced changes to housing needs and preferences that really began in the fall of 2020 contributed greatly to the heightened buyer demand during 2021. So only during July and August, when families with children tend to relocate, did closed sales of single-family homes outpace condominiums during the year. So that data indicates that home type preferences shifted in 2021 to condominiums. So as shown by an increase in closed condo sales of up to 37.2% over 2020. Now, condominiums in the $500,000 to the $1 million price range reported the highest increase of 97.8% in closed sales, and that's compared to all other home types and price ranges, and that's tracked by neighbor. So much of that data is relative to people fleeing high-rises and condos during the 2020 height of the pandemic, and now they were gaining some comfort with vaccinations and with protocols here in 2021. So based upon all this data, with interest rates still incredibly low, and with the need for more new homes to support buyer demand, as well as a fewer number of homes actually hitting the market, it's a pretty educated guess that the 2022 real estate market forecast is going to be pretty similar to what we saw in 2021. There was so much demand and the lack of inventory that prices kept creeping up, and buyers were willing to pay more for homes than what homes were listed for across the board, giving sellers pretty much anything they wanted. So in 2021, sellers had all of the leverage and were taking offers with little or no contingencies, and the terms of the contract mostly were in the seller's favor. In my opinion, based on this data, this year is going to be similar, but maybe with some changes. So with a quick recap, on a positive note, the economy looks good, the tide and all the boats are rising, buyers want to buy, rates are low and should remain low relative to historical rates, and the market is still incredibly attractive to sellers. Sales will stay competitive, solid, and very strong next year, and home prices will continue to rise. Now, the bad news, and what is dampening our housing market, is that we still aren't building enough homes. There are more buyers than homes, and obviously, the pandemic has created challenges for us through all that, supply, all that fun stuff. So it's getting harder and harder for first-time home buyers to enter the market because of the increase in prices and the low inventory levels. So it is more important than ever to work with a strong realtor to help navigate this challenging marketplace. So I hope this market report was helpful, and if you're looking for more real estate market updates and just information on our beautiful little slice of paradise here in Naples and Southwest Florida, be sure to click subscribe on my YouTube channel for weekly videos and more information about Naples and how fabulous it is here in Southwest Florida. And you might check out this video, and I hope all of this helps you love the way you live, Naples.